Hello everyone and welcome back to online video classes by Konnur English Medium School. In the last two sessions we discussed Wrong Man in Worker's Paradise, the first lesson from part 1 of your English textbook. Today we will continue to the second lesson, which is the Elixir of Real Life, the Elixir of Life, written by Sir C.V. Raman. Who doesn't know that name, Sir C.V. Raman? He is one of the greatest scientists that India has produced, and he is also the only scientist from India to have received the Nobel Prize. But C.V. Raman was not just a great scientist, he was also an accomplished writer. So when we read his essay, The Elixir of Life, we see that he had such a command over his ability to express his thoughts in English. So that's about the Elixir of Life written by Sir C.V. Raman. Let's go into the details. This is the overview of this lesson, what we are going to study in this lesson. We are going to study about water, how water is important and what a wonderful role water plays in our life. So, water is indispensable to plant and animal life. Water also causes evils like soil erosion. Excess of water can be preserved for good purposes. So this is the overview of this essay. So we know that water is very important. It plays a critical role in the existence of life on earth, not just for human beings, for plants and birds and animals as well. And even though water is so wonderful, it can cause some evils like soil erosion and floods. And excess of water can be preserved. We can store additional water, excess water, and then use it wisely. And it is very important that we do that. So C.V. Raman tells us why we need to conserve or why we need to preserve water. So that's what this essay is about. I have collected some images so that this essay becomes interesting, because this is not a story like A Wrong Man in Worker's Paradise. The language aspect of a story is very different compared to that of an essay. Essays are serious discussions, while stories can be fun, stories can be emotional, and it is also very easy to understand a story and remember it, because events happen in a chronological order. Essay contains paragraphs after paragraphs, and that's all about some topic and some discussion based on that topic. So here in this essay, the topic is water, and Sir C.V. Raman calls it Real Elixir of Life. So we are going to find out what that means. Look at these two pictures. What do you see on the left side is a jar, a glass jar, and that seems to contain some bubbling green liquid in it. Yes? Looks very beautiful, isn't it? Well, this is the picture of a divine amrita, divine liquid, you know. Whoever drinks this liquid, even a drop of that liquid, that person will attain immortality. Immortality, that means that person will not die, so he will live on forever. So this amrita gives that power to whoever drinks it. Where do we find that amrita? Can we purchase it? Can we create it? Can we manufacture it? Can you produce it in some way? Well, no, we don't know. Nobody has ever seen it. It's just an imaginary picture, and the liquid itself is imaginary. It's not real. Nobody has ever seen it. But humankind has been fascinated with that concept of some substance, some liquid that could confer immortality. Well, I think this comes from the famous legend of the Samudra Manthana, you know. Gods and demons once decided to churn the ocean of milk to produce divine liquid, this amrita. So maybe from that story, we've been inspired by that story, and then for ages now we have been trying to produce something like that could give us the immortality. But fortunately or unfortunately, we haven't been able to produce such a liquid. So this is imaginary so far, and this will continue to be imaginary for who knows, maybe forever. But what about this picture? What do you see in this picture? what you see in this picture first is the water, yes, the water. So this is imaginary. What about this? This is real. Water doesn't confer immortality, yes. By drinking water, you cannot hope for immortality. You cannot hope that you will never die. But drinking water is essential to your life. It is essential to all our lives. It's essential to the plant life, to animal life. Without water, we are definitely going to die, yes. So that is for sure. Whether water confers immortality is debatable, but whether you die without water, that is for sure. You will die without water. So why don't we consider this amrita instead of something that we haven't yet discovered? So in the opening paragraph of this essay, Sir C.V. Raman brings our attention to this difference, imaginary elixir and real elixir. Water, plain water, which is available in abundant quantity, is the real elixir of life. Yes, 71% of Earth's surface is covered with water. Yes, and water is the basis of all life on Earth. This is how he begins his essay. So he wants to catch your attention, because writing something on water probably will not interest the readers immediately. So he wants to catch your attention and say, here there is really, the amrita is really available. Yeah? You may not have paid attention to it. Amrita is right there, it's water. The divine elixir is maybe not, you cannot find it, but water you can definitely. Yes, it's everywhere, it's in your household, it's right there next to you. So that is how he begins his essay. He starts emphasizing on the importance of water. So this is the map of Northern Africa. The map of Northern Africa. These are all the countries you see in the Central and Northern Africa. We're talking about the continent Africa. Sir C.V. Raman, he traveled extensively, and once he found himself standing along the line, the border that separated a big desert, it's called the Libyan desert, from the valley of the Nile River. Okay, so you see the two countries here, Libya and Egypt. So from here, Central Africa, the river Nile starts to flow. It moves northward and it joins the Mediterranean Sea here. Yes. It flows through this region, Egypt. It doesn't flow through Libya. And in Libya, there is an expanse of desert, okay? Desert. Nothing but sand everywhere. So, Sir C.V. Raman, he noticed a wonderful difference there. What difference did he notice? Standing along the line that separated the desert of Libya from the Nile Valley, he noticed some distinct features, and we will see what those features were. On one side, he saw a sea of billowing sand. On one side, on the Libyan side, he saw a sea of billowing sand. What is a sea of billowing sand? So, as long as your eyes could see, as far as your eyes could see, all there was sand. Nothing else, yes? Not a speck of green anywhere. Not even a green shrub. All there was sand, okay? Not a single living thing. See, billowing sand is like waves of the ocean, right? The sand, expansive sand was such that it looked like a sea of sand, yes? Okay, imagine that, a sea of sand. That's how the desert looked on one side, yes? There was nothing, there was no sign of any kind of life, no plants, no animals, and definitely no human beings as well. And on the other side, the situation, the scenery was exactly the opposite, yes? One of the greenest areas of the world. Standing, okay, just remember, just understand this. He is standing along the line that separates the Libyan desert from the other side, where there is the valley of the Nile. Valley of the Nile means the region through which the Nile River flows. So on that region through which the Nile River flows, it is one of the greenest areas in the world. Why? Because of the water, of course. And one of the most fertile areas also. It is also one of the world's most fertile areas and one of the most densely populated areas. Now contrast that. Here there was nothing but an ocean of sand, not a speck of green, not a living thing. But on the other side, this is one of the greenest, most densely populated and most fertile areas of the world. And it was full of life, teeming with life. Teeming with life means full of life, full of vegetation. There were trees, plants, birds, animals, and of course human settlement. So you see, what is this difference? What is this wonderful difference? What caused this wonderful difference? It's nothing but the presence of the flowing waters of the river Nile. So water can make such a wonderful difference. Now, do you agree now that water is the real elixir of life? Yes? It sustains life. It is the basis of all life. Now, let's look at the image here. This is how the Libyan desert looks. Yes? There's nothing attractive about it. Just some brown sand everywhere you see. Nothing attractive about that. Nothing interesting about it. Just a desert. It's a desert. Now this is the Nile Valley. The Nile Valley is rich with vegetation, trees, plants, and of course water. And there are cities around it. There are countries along the valley of the river Nile. So this wonderful difference was brought about by the presence of water. So water is the real elixir of life. Geologists tell us that the entire soil of the Nile Valley is the creation of the river itself. So this fertile area that you find along the valley of the river Nile and the soil which is very fertile there, this is the creation of the river Nile itself, which has been flowing for thousands of years. Who says that? Geologists say that. And who are geologists? Geologists are experts. They study the surface of the earth. They study rocks. They study mountains. So they are experts in that field of study. So they tell us that this deposited soil along the banks of along the valley of river Nile is nothing but the creation of the river itself. It was brought down as the finest silt in its floodwaters from the highlands of Abyssinia and from remote Central Africa and laid down through the ages in the trough through which the Nile flows into the sea. Now, of course, it has happened over thousands of years. The river which flows from the Central Africa, from a country called Ethiopian Republic or the Republic of Ethiopia, which is referred to as Abyssinia sometimes. So from those regions of Central Africa, the river flows towards the north and into the Mediterranean Sea. And while it flows, it carries silt. Silt is that fine soil which is rich in nutrition, nutrient-rich soil. And along the banks of the river, the water deposits that soil, that nutrient soil, the silt, which is very fertile. So this creation has to be credited to the river Nile itself. No one else is, or nothing else is responsible but the Nile River itself. Egypt, in fact, was made by its river. Its ancient civilization was created and sustained by the life-giving waters which come down year after year with unfailing regularity. Now the entire Egyptian civilization, you have studied about the ancient civilizations. Now this civilization happened because of the presence of the Nile River. So the entire country even today, it has flourished because of the Nile River. So Nile River has played such an important role not just in Egypt. Water has played such an important role not just in Egypt but everywhere in the world. Wherever there is water, there are civilizations. So water is such a crucial thing for the existence of life on the surface of earth. And water adds to the beauty of the landscape, says C.V. Raman. So he is highlighting that factor of the water as well. I mean, water is present everywhere, yes, but it also has that beautifying role to play. So it makes the landscape, the scenery beautiful. Wherever there is water, that surrounding area has its own appeal. So he talks about the rain-fed tanks of South India. So South India is known for its tanks. There is a man-made lakes. When a man-made lake is called a tank. Yes, that's the difference. Lakes are naturally occurring. So if man wants to hold water for agricultural purposes or industrial purposes, then he has to create a small reservoir, or he has to build a tank. So ancient people did not have the technology to build water reservoirs, the dams, but they had the simplistic method of creating tanks. So in South India, because monsoon, is it's a big gamble here. You can't really depend on the rainfall. So we had to find ways to store water. So our ancestors built these tanks. There are hundreds of tanks in South India. And C.V. Raman says that these tanks are not well maintained. They are poorly maintained. But they are beautiful when they are full, when it has rained and the rainwater has fed into these tanks look very beautiful. So even though they are neglected in their maintenance, they are a cheering sight when they are full. Cheering sight means they look very pleasant. Shallow but appear deep, as the silt-laden bottom is not visible, because these tanks are not really deep, but they appear deep because of the silt that is brought by the rain water, and it settles down in the bottom, at the bottom of these tanks. The bottom becomes invisible. However, they are not deep, they are shallow. The opposite of deep is shallow. So these tanks play a critical role in Indian agriculture. Some are surprisingly large, provide a great view of sunrise and sunset. So it's also a wonderful experience to watch a sunrise or sunset by the bank of these tanks. So water adds beauty to the landscape. It makes the surrounding area beautiful. Look at this image. So that's a tank, that's a man-made lake, yes? And there is water in it. It looks really beautiful. The surrounding area looks beautiful. Another one. So this is what C.V. Raman is talking about. So water in landscape is like eyes in a human face, says C.V. Raman. So why are eyes important on human face? Just imagine, of course we won't be able to see as well. Of course without eyes we won't be able to see, and the face looks really weird. But eyes also play another important role there, yes? They express our emotions when we are sad, angry, happy, cheerful, yes? When we are surprised, when we are shocked. So all those emotions are somehow wonderfully expressed in our eyes. So these tanks or the water bodies are like the eyes of the landscape. So C.V. Raman compares those water bodies to the eyes on a human face. They reflect the mood of the hour. That means they look bright and cheerful when the sun shines, and they look dark and gloomy when the sky is overcast. So when there are clouds, when there is not sufficient amount of sunlight passing through to us, well, the water looks dull and grey. But if the sun is really shining and the day is really bright, you can see the sunlight sparkling in the water. So it's like the water is expressing the mood of the day, just like the eyes on human face express that person's mood. That is why he compares the tanks to the eyes on the human face. Now silt is responsible for the characteristic color of the water in rain-fed tanks. In rain-fed tanks, the water looks muddy most of the times. And why it looks muddy is because the silt has been brought by the flowing water, the rainwater. And that silt adds to that characteristic color of the rain-fed tanks. Now remember, rain-fed tanks are called so because they will be full only if it rains. So the water in them comes from the rains, Okay, that's why they are called rain-fed tanks. Now, we talked about the wonderful difference the water makes. We talked about how water adds beauty to the landscape, to the countryside. Now C.V. Raman gets to the main point of his essay, that is how water plays both constructive as well as destructive role. Talking about the constructive role is beneficial. As when we say something is constructive, it is beneficial, it is advantageous to us. So how is water advantageous? It carries a silt with it. When water flows, it carries a silt with it. And that silt, which is the fertile soil, it helps agriculture. So this is one of the significantly beneficial roles played by water. So how does silt-laden land looks? This is how it looks. Yes, this is all silt deposited by flowing water. The water has flowed away, but it has left behind this fine particle of soil. This is very fertile. This is called silt. But soil also plays destructive role. The same water that brings silt with it can also take away the silt. Yes, if it is flowing very fast, if it is flowing rapidly, then it can wash away the already deposited soil. And when this happens, we call it soil erosion. This is washing away of the rich top layer of the soil. The top layer of the soil, which is very rich in nutrients, it can get carried away by the fast flowing water. And that condition is called soil erosion. And this is how a land that has been victim of soil erosion looks. You see, this is not silt. Actually, silt has been washed away now. The fertile layer, the top rich layer, has been washed away by the fast flowing water. Look at another image. Yes, the important top layer of the soil has been washed away. One more. Here is another. Now you see, this is what is responsible for fast flowing water. This is one of the reasons why soil erosion happens. The ruts, these are called ruts. These are small cracks through which water continues to flow, and then these cracks expand and become bigger ones. So we call them ruts. So presence of these ruts on the surface of the area makes it easier for water to flow faster. And the faster the water flows, it causes soil erosion. The problem with soil erosion, C.V. Raman says, you cannot detect it in its earlier stages. It occurs in a way that it becomes evident or it becomes visible only after it has reached the advanced stage. So it happens in successive steps, not easy to detect in its early stages. Sudden bursts of excessively heavy rain is primary factor. Now there are different reasons why soil erosion happens, but the primary factor is the sudden burst of excessive rain. When it rains heavily and suddenly, the water flows rapidly, and that causes soil erosion. This is the primary factor. That means there are other factors too. There are secondary factors too. Let's have a look at them. The slope of the land is another factor. Slope of the land causes the water to flow down very fast. And removal of natural protective coat of vegetation. This is another factor. Removal of natural protective coat of vegetation. Well, there are trees and plants naturally growing everywhere, but we human beings, because we want to establish towns and cities, and no amount of land is sufficient for us, we are continuing to cut down trees. We are causing deforestation, and this is called removal of natural coat of vegetation. Absence of trees only helps water flow faster. So the slope of the land is one secondary factor, and removal of natural coat of vegetation is another secondary factor. Existence of those cracks I explained in the previous slide, the ruts, they are another factor. and absence of any checks, they become the secondary or contributory factors. Absence of any checks means there is nothing to stop that water or slow down that water. So it continues to flow rapidly, and then as it flows, it takes away all the fertile soil with it. So this is how soil erosion happens. This is how soil erosion occurs. So incredibly large quantities of precious soil is washed away, and it is so dangerous for agriculture. So if this continues to happen, if we continue to lose that fertile soil, then agricultural activities will be very badly affected. So what can we do to prevent the soil erosion? Do we have any measures, or do we have any methods to follow that will help us? To some extent, we can prevent the soil erosion. Yes, we definitely have some of those measures. One of the measures is terracing of the land, or it is called terraced farming. I will show pictures how terraced farming looks. Another measure is contour cultivation. Then we also have the option of constructing bunds or check dams to prevent the rapid flow of water. And of course, we have to carry on planting more and more number of trees, so that this natural coat of vegetation is restored. These are some measures which we can definitely implement and then reduce soil erosion. Let's look at the pictures. This is called terraced farming. You see the slope of the land there? Yes? If you create these terraces, small step-like structures, then you can sow seeds there. As the water flows down, it will slow down, because without these structures, water will flow down rapidly, and then it will take away all the soil that is present there. Terraced farming. This was an illustration. Now I'll show you the real image of terraced farming. This is how terraced farming looks. Yes? So this definitely prevents water in downhill areas, in slope areas from flowing faster. This is the image of contour cultivation. Contour cultivation is these uneven stripes of plowing. Yes? This is how you plow the land. Instead of straight furrows, you plow the land like this, and then you grow plants there. So this also prevents water flowing in one straight direction. As long as it flows in one straight direction, it becomes very easy for the water to flow faster, and then that causes a soil erosion. So contour cultivation is another very effective method in preventing soil erosion. And if the water is flowing faster near agricultural areas, then the risk is higher. So you can implement something like small check dams. You can construct some small check dams. These are also called bunds. So C.V. Raman has used the word bund there instead of check dam. So you can use some fallen tree logs. You can place there across the stream of water, which will slow the flow of water. These are traditional ways of creating check dams. You see there is another one where logs of trees have been placed, logs of trees, yes, they have been placed there to slow the water down. And these are modern ones, yes, constructed with cement and bricks and stone. This is not a water reservoir, it's not a dam to store water. It's basically done to slow down the flow of water. Yes, another one. So these images, they show how check dams or bunds look. So we have these measures to adopt. One is terracing of the land, or contour cultivation, or construction of bunds, and the planting of appropriate vegetation along the slopy areas especially, where these trees and plants can prevent water from flowing very fast. Now when we prevent soil erosion, we actually have another advantage from it. Yes, our main purpose of preventing soil erosion, or the measures to prevent soil erosion, is to retain that rich, nutrient-rich soil, the top layer of soil. But that also helps us in other ways. Yes, It keeps the soil where it is wanted, and also it retains water. If the water flows slowly, there is a greater possibility of the soil of absorbing that water. If the ground absorbs that water, then there will be an increase in the underground water table as well. So these measures, they not only help us prevent soil erosion, but they also help us in retaining water where it is wanted. So those were the constructive and destructive powers of water. Now we'll talk about preservation part of the this water. Remember, from overview we had 3 points, yes? So there is also how it is necessary to preserve water for good purposes. So when there is excess amount of water, and that excess amount of water flows to waste, and that we do nothing about it, then there could be situations, worse situations, where we don't get rainfall the next year, and then there's a big scarcity of water. And the scarcity of water doesn't just affect the domestic life, it affects industries, it affects agriculture, it affects us on different levels. So what should we do to make sure that this excess flowing water is retained and it can be used? So that is where we talk about preservation and proper utilization of water. Water is the basis of all life. We know that. Moisture in the soil necessary for growth of plants. Rain is the ultimate source of water apart from artesian water. Apart from the underground water, rainwater is the ultimate source of water. So that is where we get water from. Much of Indian agriculture depends on seasonal rainfall. And in a country like India, where the rainfall is seasonal in the sense the rainfall occurs only in a certain season. So for example, monsoon season, which is about to commence now. So however, there is no assurance that even in these seasons the rainfall will happen. So it is possible that we will miss rainfall in a certain season, and that has happened many times. And if it continues to happen, then our agricultural activities will be badly hit. And our agriculture depends on rainfall, because we do not have the technology yet to make use of the other sources of water efficiently. So we depend upon rainfall. Problem of soil erosion and inadequate rainfall are connected with each other. So this scarcity of rainfall and the problem of soil erosion, they're all interconnected, and addressing one issue will automatically resolve the other issue. So what we need to do is, we need to start planting trees. We need to conduct afforestation campaigns, yes? Afforestation campaigns, and it has to be done on a wide scale, and we have to develop civilized forests. What are civilized forests? Civilized forests are nothing but man-made forests. A forest that grows on its own in the wild, yes, untamed jungle as it is called, is very different from civilized forests. Civilized forests are thoughtfully created forests with a suitable vegetation, with suitable trees and plants. So C.V. Raman proposes this idea of a civilized forest. He says, systematic planting of trees in every possible or even impossible areas. So we have to plant trees everywhere it is possible, or even impossible areas. That is how critical it is to do these afforestation campaigns. And development of civilized forests will add to the national wealth. Okay. Now, while on one hand we're expanding our towns and cities and then causing forests to dwindle, they are decreasing in their areas. On the other side, we can do something constructive and start planting trees wherever it is possible, and not plant any trees. Consult experts, and they will let you know which trees are suitable for your local area. The soil type, the weather, climate, all conditions will be considered, and they will advise you and then you can plant those trees and then create a small forest in your, maybe you have an acre of land, you can turn it into a small forest. Such forests are called civilized forests. These are man-made forests. So they will prove to be a great wealth for the country. In many ways they will help us as well as the environment. So, and they will also check soil erosion, because presence of trees, yes, greater presence of trees will definitely slow down the flowing of water. And this water that suddenly flows and then joins the sea, and then we don't get much of it. Instead of that, when we have these civilized forests, when we have a thick coat of natural vegetation, then it will slow down and the ground will be able to absorb that water to a greater extent. And the more water is absorbed, the underground water tables will rise. So this is a very wise way of preventing soil erosion, as well as making sure that enough water is stored and is available for other purposes. Now, measures to control such water flow will also serve other purposes, subsidiary purposes. One, development of waterways for internal transport. Now, in a country like India, this has not been yet possible. We are talking about internal transport waterways. Instead of buses and trains, why can't we use water transport? Why can't we construct large canals through which small boats can travel from one part of the city to the other part of the city, like in Venice, in Italy, where water transport is primary transport. I will show you pictures. So water transport will be possible. Internal water transport will be possible if we have sufficient amounts of water. Why it has not been possible is because there is always a scarcity of water in our country, because we depend on the seasonal rainfall, which is a gamble. So if we are wise enough and if we know how to store this water, not let it flow into the ocean, then we can very soon be able to create waterways, internal waterways, and these are the cheapest form of transport as well. I mean, there's not much maintenance to do, you don't have a lot of investment to do, and once you create them, then they are going to exist there. They are not like the roads. The roads have to be maintained, they have to be repaired frequently. But internal waterways will not pose that problem for us. And they are beneficial to life in the countryside. Because countryside, the rural areas, cannot afford expensive infrastructure. They cannot afford the kind of transport facilities that cities or in other metro cities can offer. So internal waterways can help the countryside. And here are some pictures of how internal waterways or water transport within a city or town look like. Yes, this is Italy, and this is a city called Venice, where these waterways are very common there. You see the boats, and this is a canal. Alongside the canal you see the buildings, houses, people traveling in boats. So this can happen if we can store water. And the second subsidiary purpose that these measures which prevent soil erosion can serve is that we can develop hydroelectric power. Yes, for a big country with a big population like ours, generation of electricity has always been a challenge. Yes, we are very familiar with these power outages, and we know how they affect us on different levels. So we need electricity for many purposes, not just for the fans and refrigerators. We need them to keep the machines running in industries. We need them to put water from the underground water table. So we need electricity for everything in a modern economy. And the generation of electricity is a big challenge. But why don't we use water to do that, which is not very expensive, also very effective. So if we have the ability to store water, we can make the water run into some turbine and then spin it and then generate electricity. So while we are trying to prevent soil erosion, we are also creating that extra advantage there for us by keeping the water available for all these uses. So development of electric power, it will help the rural economy as well. So these are the points C.V. Raman discusses under the development of hydroelectricity. Harvesting of water supplies helps development of hydroelectric power, makes a tremendous difference to the life of the countryside. It enables multi-directional improvement of rural economy, enables tapping of underground water to a great extent, minimizes the bad effects of irregular or inadequate rainfall. So a lot of problems will be solved if we can learn how to harvest and utilize water properly. So to conclude this essay, C.V. Raman declares, water is the commonest of all liquids with most uncommon properties. Yes, it is the commonest of all liquids. 71% of Earth's surface is water. But it has also most uncommon properties. Even though it is commonest, it has properties which are very, very unique to it. I mean, these properties are not available for any other liquid. And these properties are, of course, life-saving properties, life-sustaining properties. So water sustains life. It is the real elixir of life. And this is why we should forget about that divine Amrita and then save what we already have, the real elixir, which is plain water. So that's it in today's session. We went through this essay, Elixir of Life, written by C.V. Raman. If you have any questions, you can always call me on this number, 966-385-4343. I will try to help you on phone calls or on WhatsApp, or you can also ask these questions in comments on YouTube. I will reply to those comments as much as I can.